Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Karen Fleiss, licensed clinical psychologist and clinical director of the NYU Child Study Center Long Island office at the Child Study Center. Today, we're going to talk about parenting, navigating challenges when parenting a young adult with ADHD. And I hope to cover today a few different topics related to parenting. I'd like to first review a teen's typical path to young adulthood, how the path to young adulthood is compounded for teens with ADHD and their parents, how the landscape has changed for both parents and young adults, some challenges that young adults with ADHD face in college and the workplace, the role of social media in the life of a teen with ADHD, and ways for parents to promote a healthy, supportive relationship with their young adult who has ADHD. So let's just review the typical path for teens to young adulthood. As we all know, teens can be a very challenging and turbulent phase for both parents and teens. It begins in adolescence, and there is a lot of anxiety and worry about the future. Teens feel during this time a greater need for autonomy. They begin to question and challenge the authority, parents and teachers alike. They question rules as well as the norms of society. They want to do things their way, figure out their own identity. And as a result, there's often increase in conflict between parents and their teens. Parents in an ideal setting learn to change their approach from manager, where they're very involved in their youngster's life, to more of a consultant, providing support, confidence, understanding, and a faith in their teen that eventually they'll figure things out. So teens with ADHD are on the same path as typical peers, but they experience more challenges. They certainly have anxiety and worry about the future, but teens with ADHD may feel more anxiety about their ability to succeed because they've had struggles along the way. There is a need for greater autonomy, but yet teens with ADHD still require support, which they may resist in their struggle for greater autonomy. They want to do things their way as their neurotypical teen peers, but they may struggle with confidence and self-esteem because they often lag behind in social and emotional development. And the conflict with parents may even be intensified because teens with ADHD have challenges with emotion regulation. So it makes their emotions, their feelings, which are expressed, bigger, magnified, leading to more intense conflict with parents. And for a parent's role to change, parents need to feel confident that they can shift from manager to consultant. But when they are raising a teen who has ADHD, they often feel that they need to continue to be involved in their teens' development and in their teens' lives. And of course, this leads to greater worry on the parents' part about their child's ability to succeed. And ADHD doesn't disappear as teens age. 2/3 of young adults still struggle with symptoms. Their inattention and distractibility is manifested in continued difficulty with sustaining attention. They are easily distracted. They have difficulty starting tasks. They often have difficulty finishing tasks, shifting from one task to another. In terms of hyperactivity, they may feel an inner restlessness, an inability to relax, a fidgetiness. With regard to impulsivity, they might interrupt or act and react without thinking, and they can be very impatient. And then the executive function challenges often accompany a diagnosis of ADHD and include difficulties with planning, prioritizing, time management, sequencing, management of their materials. They're often losing things, and goal setting. And teens with ADHD struggle due to symptoms of the ADHD, but also executive function challenges. Emotion regulation is a big issue. It makes stress and frustration tolerance, as well as motivation, a problem. And their frustration tolerance and their stress management is even harder to deal with. They struggle also to anticipate the consequences of their actions. I work with a young adult female who has ADHD. She was not taking medication, and when she was driving, she would experience intense road rage. It was so extreme. She would describe becoming very impatient when behind let's say, an older driver who was going slower, and she would either honk on the horn, or really feel so frustrated that she just wanted to get out and yell at the woman. And we talked about, of course, how this is connected to her challenges with regulating her own emotions. Her frustration tolerance was quite high, and we spoke about cognitive strategies to help her reduce her frustration, help to deal with the situation on the road better, and of course, we spoke about medication management as another intervention as well. But in addition, as teens get older, they may not fully embrace or understand the diagnosis or the symptoms of ADHD. They may know they have ADHD. They've been told they may describe themselves as having ADHD, but they may not be able to fully appreciate or anticipate its impact, or where, how, and when the symptoms interfere with their functioning and performance. They may not take their medication consistently if it's prescribed, because inconsistency is a hallmark of ADHD. And as they continue to struggle for independence, they likely still need continued parental support, and their self-esteem and confidence may remain tenuous. In addition to the challenges that I just described, in specific areas of their lives, they have also struggled. In the academic arena, throughout school, they likely struggle to learn study skills. Organizational challenges begin to emerge and become most apparent in middle school and continue through high school. Their social challenges also persist. About 50% of teens with ADHD have problems with peer relationships. They either experience rejection by peers, or they have non-reciprocated friendships where they're trying and working to make connections, but it's not reciprocated. And then the emotion regulation challenges, as I just described, that manifest a great deal in fluctuating emotions, but also impulsivity, may lead to riskier behavior. Teens with ADHD tend to start using substances earlier than their typical peers. And so as they're transitioning to young adulthood, it's not going to be so easy. A lot of times, teens with ADHD have had supports throughout their school years. They might have had a smaller class setting, scaffolding, tutoring, coaching, a reduced workload, perhaps an individualized education plan, or 504 accommodations. And the supports then may be reduced, if not non-existent, when they move on to college or the workplace, leading to a struggle academically as well as interpersonally. I work with another young adult who started college a year ago, and he did not have accommodations in his freshman year. And he struggled with things like creating a schedule for himself, figuring out, because his classes varied from day to day, right? He might have had an 8 o'clock class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then a 1 o'clock class on Tuesday and Thursday. And he really struggled to develop a routine. He also struggled with managing the workload. Not only were the classes, of course, we know in college are much longer, so sustaining attention and keeping focused, but also he found that he was doing the work for the classes that were more interesting to him, leading him to procrastinate and put off the work in the less interesting classes, which at the end of the semester, you can imagine what happened. He had a whole bunch of work to do. He eventually got the work done, but he lost points because many of the assignments were handed in late, and he did not do as well as he would have liked. So let's just talk about some of the college challenges for young adults with ADHD. Finding the right college, the right fit, the size, the location, the kind of population that would help the young adult feel comfortable, and whether or not the college offers supports and accommodations is something to be considered. And then applying to college is a long-term project. It needs to be broken down into smaller tasks for teens with ADHD. It requires a great attention to details, deadlines. There's a lot of follow-up and follow-through, as well as ongoing communication. that needs to take place. And all of these aspects make it very difficult for teens with ADHD to going through that whole college process. And then, as I just illustrated through my example of a young man that I continue to work with who's in college now, adjusting to college life can be really difficult. It requires independent functioning. And for kids who have been supported for so many years and now are required to work to function independently, right? Doing their laundry, making sure they have enough food, and getting through their life on a day-to-day basis successfully is really quite difficult. They have difficulty creating and following a schedule. They have trouble, as I mentioned, sustaining their attention in the longer classes, and managing the workload and balancing social life and the academic life. The academic work is also challenging. And needless to say, there are temptations, certainly social, but also substance related, that make it really hard for teens with ADHD to make the adjustment. And often that freshman year can be really tenuous and quite challenging for individuals struggling with ADHD. And for those who are not going to college, but opting to go into the workplace, the job search itself is a challenge. The process of searching for jobs and finding a job these days is so tedious. And I really feel for young adults who are trying to find a job, because it's so different than years ago. Now young adults have to send out their resume to like many places. They have to fill out applications. There's no feedback given. Oftentimes I hear that they don't get any response back. They're just sending their application and resume out into an abyss, so they don't really know whether or not it was received or it's gone to the right person or if they'll hear anything back. So persistence is really required. Follow through and follow up is essential. And because it's so tedious with no immediate feedback for young adults with ADHD, it can be really hard to stay with it. And it's really a challenge. And then interviewing itself is a skill. Young adults with ADHD really need to, of course, do their research ahead of time. I coach them to really do practice interviews with me so that they're really prepared. They know about the company that they're applying to, and they've done enough research and have good questions to ask and be able to respond in a way, staying on track, answering their questions without getting off task or distracted. Then the adjustment to the job setting is also a challenge for young adults with ADHD. Often jobs require initiative, good time management skills, follow through on tasks, managing their frustration when things don't work out so well, or when they're struggling to learn something and they feel like maybe they're not getting it as easily and as quickly as they want. And then, of course, interpersonal struggles could be present, perhaps with other coworkers or even in their relationship and their dealings with their supervisor or manager. And I think because it's such a part of our lives these days, and all of us are trying to manage social media, I thought I'd spend a couple of minutes on talking about social media and its impact on young adults with ADHD, because I think it's especially hard for people with ADHD to really navigate this part of their lives. So we know that social media is here to stay. For people with ADHD, social media presents unique challenges, but also some benefits. And due to their attention regulation challenges, their impulse control, emotion regulation, all of these factors are influenced by social media. Social media, as we know, is delivered in a very specific way, brief content, it's fast-paced, it's very stimulating. So the effects can be both positive and negative for teens with ADHD. So let me just highlight some of the negatives, which I'm sure many of you already have an idea of, but it's worth it to mention it nevertheless. Teens with ADHD have a harder time, as we know, regulating their attention. They tend to get overly focused, so it's hard to put down their phones because of the attention-grabbing mechanisms of social media. Teens with ADHD crave stimulation. Social media is set up to provide instant gratification. And as a result, they can develop compulsive scrolling, which is always checking their phones. I work with another young man who's a senior, and we spent some time talking about his relationship to his phone because he would admit that he had his phone nearby while he was doing work, and every time it pinged, he had the compulsion. He couldn't not check it. And I'm sure a lot of young people would say this, but people with ADHD really have a hard time ignoring it. And then, of course, once he started checking the phone, he would then stay on it much longer than he expected and lose so much time from his study time or his work time. And it really was quite problematic. He also had trouble putting it down at the end of the night. So we know that it can negatively impact sleep because teens with ADHD often get to sleep later in general because they often have trouble falling asleep. But then if they're on their phones, they have trouble turning it off and saying, okay, I'm going to put this away. And the content, though, what they're seeing on social media can also increase feelings of inadequacy by social comparison, right? Seeing what other people are doing, what they're not doing. It feeds into their feelings of low self-esteem and lack of confidence and not feeling good about themselves. And of course, because of impulsivity, they can perhaps post inappropriate texts or make comments that they quickly regret, or maybe they overshare and go too far. So these are some of the challenges and the negative impact that social media can have on young adults with ADHD. But just to balance it out a little bit, the positive impact that social media can have on individuals with ADHD are as follows, right? Social media offers the opportunity to connect with online communities. By doing so, young adults with ADHD can get validation, maybe advice. Information about ADHD is of course, like everything else, quite prevalent on social media and on the internet. Online platforms such as Reddit, TikTok, or Discord. And I see that TikTok is not spelled correctly. My apologies. It should be TikTok. And Discord offer, the online communities where they can talk and engage and share and express. It offers creativity and stimulation. There are creative outlets such as music, art videos, things that they can kind of add to and connect with. And then educational and informative spaces can be found, such as through short videos. There are helpful hints and strategies. There's so much we can learn. We know that YouTube offers an infinite amount of videos on just about anything. So too, for mental health, I've seen so many videos and there are podcasts that can really help people struggling with all different kinds of mental health challenges, and certainly individuals struggling with ADHD. And then the social connection that it offers, being online, connecting through an online community, with an online community, there's less pressure. And of course, gaming platforms and forums allow for interaction and discourse without the pressure or the sizing up that people do socially when they're face to face. And so, since social media is here to stay, discipline and balance is really needed for teens and young adults with ADHD. They really need to appreciate, as much as they love it, and so many of our youth do, they really need to recognize the importance of having a balanced and a healthy relationship with it. So they need to appreciate the potential negative impact that it has on their lives and on their functioning. They need to set time limits, have screen-free periods of time, let's say during dinner or when they're with friends engaging, to certainly have a cutoff time before sleep. That's essential, and that's like the hardest to do because as a lot of people do, they're hanging out in bed, relaxing, winding down, but they scroll. But in scrolling, and because of as well the light, it actually, as we know, has an effect of keeping us up. So having a better sleep routine, not using the phone as one of the things we do before falling asleep. And to make sure that they have feeds with positive content, reinforcing, confidence building, inspiring. To use social media as a reward and not a distraction for example, after work is completed. And that's when I was referring to that senior that I'm working with who really spoke about how his phone had, been dominating his life and really robbing him of time and his ability to get his work done. We spoke about just this, like being able to use his social media time as a reward after he completed his work. And having that kind of structure really made a difference and helped. And of course, to turn off notifications, use the focus mode on phones to manage time spent on the phone. And of course, as well, to recharge the phone outside of the bedroom. It's always a danger to have the phone that close to us, in the bedroom. And I think it's helpful to just spend a couple of minutes talking about how the landscape has changed in general these days. And if parents have a greater awareness and an understanding of the changes, it can be helpful in their relationship with their young adult. So the conversations and ways that parents and their young adult children interact is different. Parents will often tell me that a lot of times when they want to talk about sensitive issues with their young adults, they'll text them. And that is an effective way of communicating. It's common for parents these days to wonder if their young adult child is on track or struggling. Kids are, maturing later. They are taking a longer time to get themselves settled. So it's common for parents to feel uncertain about what to do, how to engage with their young adult. And similarly, young adults also are feeling uncertain. In some ways, they're emotionally mature, but their lives often resemble their younger teen years. And the existing societal changes make it also challenging. Finding a job is so different, as I mentioned before, than it used to be. It's not so easy, and it usually takes longer. The financial insecurity, so many young people that I talk with are worried about their future, if they'll have a job that pays enough to be able to help them have the life that they want as they age. Some young adults are opting to stay in school longer just to give them more time to figure things out and to become established. And of course, the mental health challenges, which have been on the rise, just add to the changing landscape. But parents are a valuable resource for their young adults with ADHD, and I would say all young adults for sure, because as parents, we really know our kids often better than anyone else, and we can really be in a role of helping to guide our kids to grow and move towards greater and greater success. And some of the ways that we can do it is to teach our young adults to self-advocate, to support and encourage decision-making skills, encourage independence with support alongside that, to help our young adult develop routines and habits, to break tasks down into smaller parts, to use tools and strategies to manage time, such as calendars or timers, and how to set goals, things that they want to accomplish, small and large, to encourage them to learn to cope and problem solve, to build resilience by helping them take risks that are going to help them feel more confident about themselves, to provide support and help for co-occurring conditions like anxiety and depression, to help the young adult seek accommodations in college and the workplace, to seek help from an executive function or a career coach, and to help the young adult acknowledge any impulse spending that they might be doing, to learn how to budget, to use apps to self-monitor, to encourage the development of financial literacy, so it gives them a greater sense of security and control. So here are some strategies for parents to help in the relationship with their young adult who has ADHD. I really encourage parents to work to understand your young adult's challenges. Be sympathetic. It's not easy for them. Be curious about their interests, about their dreams, their goals, what they want in life. Be compassionate. Use effective communication, such as validation, a supportive tone. Listen for understanding. Use clear, non-judgmental language. Avoid accusations and generalizations, like you're always like this, or you never do this, or why are you doing this again? Things like that are just not helpful. Rather ask, how can I be helpful? What can I do to help? Maintain a collaborative mindset. Set clear boundaries and expectations. and encourage independence and communicate confidence in your young adult's ability to succeed. To foster helpful interactions, respect your young adult's desire for independence and autonomy. Appreciate their struggles and the impact of their struggles on their self-esteem and their own concerns about self-efficacy. And lastly, in order to be a support for your young adult, it's important to take care of yourself. And I know there's been a lot of talk about self-care, and I will say it's really important, especially when you've raised a child who has had ADHD and you've had had to give a lot all those years to get them to young adulthood. And as you continue to support them, it's really important to maintain, to provide and ensure that you are taking care of yourself. So some ways to do that are maintaining an attitude of hopefulness, a belief in your young adult. Reflect on how far he or she has come since childhood. Celebrate the small wins and focus on strengths. Sometimes, and I've heard this with parents that I'm working with. They're so worried sometimes about how will my child succeed in college. They're struggling now, and it's hard to maintain that hopefulness or the belief that the child will eventually succeed. But I've seen it, having worked with kids for so many years and have been blessed to work with them from, let's say, middle school through young adulthood. Most often they do succeed and they do achieve in the ways that we hope and want for our kids. Focus on their strengths. That's really important. Manage your own expectations. Know what is in your control and what is not. Manage your own stress. Reach out to friends and supports. Designate a worry time. And do things you enjoy and engage in mindfulness, which is staying in the present, not projecting into the future, not worrying about the future. And then encourage self-care for your young adult with ADHD. Really promote and encourage healthy habits and routines. Routines and structure are really important for people with ADHD, even though they may resist routines. They're really, they can be very grounding. Encourage good sleep, good nutrition, and of course, physical exercise. Perhaps encourage them to get into sports. And there's such a variety of sports these days, outdoor activity, maybe yoga, music, comedy, a hobby. And encourage them to build their own support system. Do they know who they can rely on? Perhaps connecting with online support groups could be really helpful. ADHD groups or podcasts. Maybe they need therapy, encouraging them to seek the help of a therapist, and also books and other resources. So I thank you for your time today. Here are some resources. The verywellmind.org is a really very comprehensive, good resource. CHAD, the National Organization for Individuals with ADHD, is also very good. And then there are a couple of good apps that people really enjoy and use, Calm and Headspace, but there are so many, and really just finding one that works for you, for your child, is the research that needs to be done and would be beneficial to do. So yeah, so I welcome any questions. Yeah, so here's a question. How can I help my adult child to self-regulate when overwhelmed, when I, parents, also have ADHD and get overwhelmed and dysregulated? Okay, that's a great question. So I think the first thing is to recognize, right, the importance of staying calm and recognizing that you are feeling overwhelmed and you're beginning to feel dysregulated. I think that's important, and that awareness and that recognition. And then take a pause, right? Just recognize at the first sign that you're beginning to feel overwhelmed and dysregulated. Take a couple of deep breaths, like really deep breaths, maybe stepping away, letting your young adult child know, I need to step away so that I can calm down, because if I stay in this situation with you, in this conversation with you, I'm going to feel a little bit more anxious, a little bit more overwhelmed. It's not going to be a productive conversation or engagement. So it's recognizing it, labeling it and identifying it, taking some deep breaths, stepping away and coming back at another time. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so it looks like we have no more questions for today. On behalf of the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, thank you for joining us today. You can find a full list of our upcoming webinars as well as recordings of previous webinars at nyulangone.org/CSC webinars, period. Thanks again. Bye and have a great day.